In the skies above Earth, reality itself began to twist. Clouds spun like torn fabric. The air vibrated as if the world itself was holding its breath. Every screen, every radio, every voice assistant went silent, and then one sound filled the planet. It was a voice. Calm, deep, powerful. "I am Erythion," it said. "I am older than your stars, older than time itself." No one moved. No one spoke. Across cities, deserts, oceans, billions listened. Soldiers stopped firing their weapons. Children froze with toys in their hands. Even the wind seemed afraid. Then the voice continued. "Humanity," it said. "You have reached a point where your existence must be tested. You build, you destroy, you claim wisdom, yet swim in chaos. I offer a challenge. A game of truth and logic. Win, and your species will live forever in peace. Lose, and Earth will be erased from the universe." For a long moment, there was only silence. Then the world erupted into panic. News channels screamed with updates. Scientists in labs shouted theories. Governments called emergency meetings. Every nation demanded to know what this god wanted. Satellites tried to locate the source of the voice, but there was none. It came from everywhere and nowhere. At the United World Council in Geneva, chaos reigned. The hall was filled with shouting leaders. "He's an alien," one said. "No, a cosmic weapon," another cried. "This could be a trick," said a general. "We should prepare our nukes." But deep down, everyone knew that weapons meant nothing here. This was not an enemy they could shoot. On a quiet screen at the back of the room, an old man watched. His name was Eli Voss. Once he had been a brilliant mathematician, famous for solving problems no computer could handle. But after his wife died, he left everything behind. Now he lived alone on a small farm, planting crops and fixing machines. When the voice came, Eli was feeding his animals. He didn't panic. He just looked up at the sky and whispered, "A test of existence, huh?" He went inside and turned on the radio. The world was falling apart. People argued over who should face the god. Some said a philosopher. Others wanted a computer. A few wanted a soldier. Eli just listened quietly. That night, he wrote a short message and sent it to the council. "If the challenge is logic and truth, then let me face it. I am ready." No one expected an answer, but within an hour, 2 black helicopters landed on his field. Soldiers stepped out, surrounding his house. A woman in a dark suit approached him. "Mr. Voss," she said, "the council requests your presence immediately." Eli looked calm. "So they accepted?" She nodded. "You're the only one who volunteered without fear." When Eli arrived in Geneva, the world was watching. Cameras followed him as he walked through the long hall toward a huge glowing sphere floating in the center. The sphere pulsed with white light. Erythion's presence. "Human," the voice said again, echoing from everywhere at once. "You are the one they send to represent your species." Eli nodded. "I am." The world waited, millions watching through screens. Erythion's voice was steady. "You are a small creature. Your world is fragile. What makes you think you can face a god?" Eli's answer was soft, but it carried across the hall. "Because you asked for logic and truth. That means you respect both. And if you respect them, then you must follow their rules, just like I do." The air shook. Even the generals looked confused. But Erythion was silent for a moment, as if thinking. Then he said, "You are clever, human. Tell me, why should your kind be allowed to exist when so much of your world is built on pain?" Eli looked up at the glowing sphere. "Because pain teaches us. We learn, we grow. You, a god, may know everything, but you stopped learning long ago." The room went dead silent. Something strange happened to the light around Erythion's form. It flickered. A single word echoed in the air. "Interesting." For the first time, the god sounded. Unsure, Eli didn't smile. He just stood quietly, his hands folded behind his back. "If you want to test us," he said, "then do it. But don't call it mercy. Call it curiosity." The god's light flared, bright enough to blind the cameras. People screamed as windows shattered. The soldiers shielded their eyes, and then through the blazing light the voice returned, louder than thunder. "Very well, human. You will play." The sky outside turned white. Clouds twisted into spirals of light. In every corner of the world, people fell to their knees, watching the heavens open. Eli felt himself rising, pulled by invisible energy. The ground faded beneath his feet. The council vanished. The earth became small, distant. He whispered to himself, "So it begins." Then the light swallowed him whole. And far above, in the cold silence of the void, a god waited, ready for the game to begin. Eli Voss felt his body being pulled through a storm of light. There was no up, no down, only motion. For a moment he thought he was dying, but then he opened his eyes and saw something that made his heart stop. He was standing on a bridge made of stars. All around him stretched a vast space filled with floating lights, moving like slow rivers. Some were blue, some gold, and others shimmered with strange colors his mind could barely understand. Before him, a figure appeared, massive, radiant, impossible to look at for long. It had no clear face, yet Eli knew instantly who it was. Erythion. Welcome to the arena of truth, the god's voice echoed. Here reality bends to my will. Here the test begins. Eli looked around quietly. His eyes studied the glowing horizon, calm and focused. So this is your world, he said softly. Beautiful, but empty. Silence, thundered Erythion. You stand before a being who has shaped galaxies. You will speak when I command, but Eli didn't bow or kneel. He simply said, then command wisely. The stars flickered. The god's light pulsed brighter, as if offended. You are bold, Erythion said. Perhaps arrogance is your species' greatest flaw, Eli replied. Or maybe it's our greatest strength. A deep vibration filled the void. The bridge under Eli's feet shifted and turned into a wide platform. The stars gathered into strange symbols around them. The first challenge, Erythion declared, is creation. He stretched out a hand, and in front of Eli, a glowing circle appeared. Inside it floated raw energy like molten glass, shifting and alive. Form life, said the god. Something that can think, move, and feel. If your creation fails to survive for even a minute, your species dies. Eli frowned slightly. From this energy? Yes, said Erythion. You must shape it with logic and truth. You have 1 human minute. Eli closed his eyes. Around him the void was silent except for the soft hum of power. He thought of his wife, her laugh, her kindness, the way she had seen beauty even in small things. He thought of humanity, of children drawing in the sand, of scientists looking through telescopes, of old people holding hands during storms. Then he whispered, Life is not made from power. It's made from love and curiosity. He moved his hand slowly through the light. The energy began to twist and form shapes, small creatures glowing faintly, fragile but alive. They looked like birds made of glass fluttering weakly. Erythion watched, unimpressed. They are weak. They will die, Eli nodded. They might, but they're not afraid. That's what makes them alive. The tiny glass creatures began to hum, a faint sound like singing. One by one they joined together, forming patterns, flying in circles as if dancing. And then something unexpected happened. The air around them glowed with color. The space filled with warmth. Erythion stepped back. What is this? Eli looked up at him. Hope, he said simply. The first spark that makes any life worth living. The creatures shone brighter. For a full minute they lived and then slowly faded back into light. The god's voice was low and unreadable. You have passed the first challenge. Eli stayed quiet. He looked tired but calm. I didn't pass anything, he said softly. You just saw what makes us human. Erythion turned away, his shape flickering. We continue, the stars trembled. The bridge changed again, this time into a massive field of black stone. The air grew heavy. From the sky above, meteors burned across the void like fiery rain. The second challenge, Erythion said, is truth. He raised a glowing hand. And suddenly images filled the air. Wars, destruction, and death. Cities burning, oceans rising, humans killing each other. Screams filled the silence. It was Earth's history, raw and cruel. This, said Erythion, is your truth. You claim to learn to love, but you destroy yourselves. You create weapons, poisons, and lies. Tell me, human, why should such a race exist? Eli's hands trembled, but his voice stayed calm. Because we try. Try? The god's voice thundered. You call endless failure trying? Yes, said Eli, looking straight into the light. We fall and we rise again. We lose people we love, but we keep hoping. Even in pain, we keep moving forward. You can't erase that with your truth. Erythion's form shimmered. Your logic is flawed. Hope is an emotion, not truth. Eli smiled faintly. Then maybe you've forgotten what truth really means. It's not about being perfect. It's about being honest with yourself. Even when it hurts. For a long moment, the god said nothing. The meteors stopped falling. The flames dimmed. In that silence, something changed in the air, a strange stillness as if the god was thinking. Finally, Erythion said, "You speak words beyond your species' wisdom. Are you sure you are human?" Eli chuckled softly. "Very sure. I'm just human enough to know when a god is afraid of learning." The light flickered again, this time violently. The stars themselves trembled. For a second, Erythion's voice grew sharper. "You speak boldly, mortal. But remember, this game has only begun." Eli took a deep rally. Eli fell through darkness that felt alive. He couldn't tell how long he had been falling. There was no light, no sound, only his own breathing. Then from the black void a whisper came. It wasn't Erythion's voice. It was softer, human. "Do you remember, Eli?" He froze. It was his wife's voice. "Clara," he said, turning around, trying to see her. But there was nothing there. Only emptiness. Then light flashed, and the darkness turned into a battlefield. Eli was standing in the ruins of a burning city. The ground was filled with broken machines, shattered glass, and the smell of smoke. Screams filled the air. Children ran past him, crying. Soldiers fired at unseen enemies. Above the chaos, Erythion's voice thundered. "Welcome to the trial of despair. This is what your species calls history. Look upon your truth." Eli watched as people fought and killed each other. The sound of explosions shook the ground. Buildings fell. The sky glowed red, he whispered. "This is human war." "Yes," said Erythion. "This is your pride. You invent art and beauty, yet destroy your own world. You praise peace, but live by violence. You claim love, but spill blood. Tell me, human, what lesson exists in this madness?" Eli's heart ached as he saw soldiers carrying wounded friends, mothers protecting their children, and strangers helping each other through the flames. He turned to the god's voice. "You only see the war," he said quietly. "You don't see the courage." "Courage?" Erythion's tone darkened. "Courage is an excuse for failure. Pain has no purpose." Eli looked up at the sky. "Then you've never lost something you loved." The battlefield went silent for a moment. The god's voice hesitated, almost uncertain. "Explain." Eli knelt beside a wounded soldier. The man was dying, but still reached out to shield a child from falling debris. "That," Eli said, pointing to them, "is courage. Pain is not just suffering, it's proof that something mattered. Humans fight because they care. Even in despair, they protect, they love, they hope." Erythion's light shimmered faintly in the smoky air. "Hope again," he said bitterly. "You use that word as if it were power." "It is," said Eli softly. "It's the only thing stronger than fear." The battlefield changed again. The war faded, and Eli now stood in a hospital. People were crying, praying, holding hands beside the sick. He saw doctors and nurses working through exhaustion. "This," said Erythion, "is more of your despair. Disease. Death. You create life only to watch it decay." Eli walked slowly past the patients. "We can't stop death," he said, "but we keep fighting it anyway. That's what makes us human. Even when we know we'll lose, we still try to heal, to comfort, to love. You can erase us, Erythion, but you can't erase that." The god was silent. His glowing form flickered above the hospital beds. "Your logic breaks the order," he said. "Pain should only destroy, not create strength." Eli looked up. "Then maybe you don't understand the kind of beings we are." The hospital dissolved again. Now Eli was in a wasteland, dark and endless. Dead trees. Broken ground. He felt cold wind across his face. Erythion's voice echoed softly now. "This is the core of despair. Everything you built gone. Every life forgotten. This is the end of humanity. If I erase your species now, it will be as if you never existed." Eli stood straight, his hands trembling, but his eyes calm. "Then let it be so," he said. "What?" The god's voice rose sharply. "If we die," Eli continued, "we die knowing we tried. We made mistakes, yes, but we learned, we created, we dreamed. You can erase our bodies, but not what we stood for. Even if you destroy us, you'll still remember this conversation." The silence that followed was long and heavy. Then Erythion's light dimmed slightly, as if something inside him was unsure. "You speak of memory," the god said quietly. "Do you believe even a god can be changed by a mortal?" Eli smiled faintly. "You wouldn't be asking that if you didn't already feel it." The darkness began to tremble. The air cracked with thunder. Erythion's form flickered violently. "You test me, human. Do not mistake patience for weakness." "I'm not testing you," Eli said calmly. You started this test. I'm just showing you what you forgot. Forgot? Eli looked around at the empty wasteland. You said you were older than time. Maybe you've been alone too long. Maybe you stopped feeling a long time ago. The god's voice turned harsh.
I am beyond feeling.
Are you? Eli asked softly. Then why does this world shake every time I speak? The sky exploded with light. Lightning tore through the black clouds. The ground split open and energy poured out like fire. Erithion's voice roared, shaking the air. Enough, you will not speak again until I command it. Eli stood firm, though his body shook from the force. You can silence my voice, Erithion, but not the truth. For a moment, the god said nothing. The storm raged and then suddenly stopped. Everything went still. The wasteland faded into white. Eli stood alone again, breathing hard. Then a low whisper came from the light. You have survived the trial of despair. Eli looked around. Survived? I didn't fight. I only spoke. That, said the voice, is what frightens me. For the first time, the tone was not godlike. It was uncertain, almost human. The white light pulsed slowly, fading into a faint glow. Your next challenge begins soon. But remember, human, every answer you give changes me. Eli frowned. Then maybe that's the point of your test. But before he could say more, the world vanished again. He was surrounded by silence, pure, heavy silence. In that moment, Eli realized something. The test wasn't only for humanity. It was for the god himself. He looked up at the unseen sky and whispered, You wanted to understand creation, didn't you? Maybe you're learning what it feels like to be one of us. The silence didn't answer, but somewhere far away, deep inside the light, Erithion's form flickered again, like a heart trying to remember how to beat. Eli stood in the silence of the white void. The air didn't move. There was no sound, no wind, no sense of time. For the first time since the test began, he wondered if he was still alive. Then a deep pulse filled the air. The light twisted, forming patterns like ripples in water. The voice of Erithion returned, lower, colder, and strangely uncertain. You have spoken much, human, the god said. You have faced despair and survived. But words are not enough. Now we test your power. Eli took a step forward. Power? Yes, said Erithion. You humans build your world through creation and destruction. Let us see if you can create as I do. This is your final trial before judgment. The space around them changed again. The void stretched into a great black canvas dotted with a few dim stars. Eli felt something stir inside him. A quiet energy. Erithion's voice echoed from every direction. You are to make a world, human. Shape it with your hands, your logic, your heart. It must live, it must grow. If it fails, your species dies with it. Eli looked at the empty darkness and felt his heart tighten. You want me to build a universe? Yes, said the god. A universe that reflects your truth. He sighed, his breath echoing faintly. Then I'll build it with what we are. Erithion floated above him like a star burning too bright. You have 1 hour in your world's time. Begin. Eli closed his eyes. The darkness was deep and endless. But somewhere inside him he remembered what hope felt like. The kind of hope his wife once carried in her smile. The kind that made humanity reach for the stars even when they were afraid. He stretched out his hands. A small spark appeared in the dark. Just a faint glow, soft and fragile. He whispered, Light first. Everything begins with light. The spark grew into a tiny sun, shining gold and warm. The empty space glowed faintly. Around it, dust and energy began to swirl. Slowly, they formed a planet, small, imperfect, but beautiful. Eli smiled weakly. It's not much, but it's alive. Erithion watched in silence. The light of his form flickered strangely, almost like breathing. Then Eli spoke again, his voice calm and steady. Now for life. Not perfect, not powerful. Just curious. He touched the small planet. Tiny lights appeared on its surface, creatures, plants, oceans moving like glass. They were simple and peaceful, living under the small sun. But then Erithion's voice came, sharp as thunder. They are weak. They cannot survive even a breath of my will. Eli looked up at him. Then don't destroy them. Watch them. The god hesitated. His light shimmered, but he said nothing. The little world kept changing. The creatures began to build things. They learned, shared, and even fought. But after each conflict, they rebuilt. Eli smiled as he watched them. You see, he said softly, even small life learns. They fail, they make mistakes. But every mistake teaches them something new. That's how we grow too. Erythion's voice lowered. But why must they suffer to learn? Why must pain exist at all? Eli turned to him. Because pain reminds us that life is real. You've existed too long without it. You've forgotten what it means to care. The void trembled slightly. The god's glow dimmed. Care? He repeated as if trying to understand the word. Yes, Eli said. To care is to feel connected to something beyond yourself. Maybe that's why you started this test. Maybe you were lonely. The silence that followed was long and heavy. Finally, Erythion said, You dare speak of loneliness to a god? Eli didn't look away. Even gods can be alone. The god's form pulsed violently, shaking the stars. You think you understand me, human? You think you can read the mind of eternity? No, Eli said quietly, but I understand emptiness. It sounds a lot like your voice. Erythion's light flared. The small world Eli created began to tremble. Its oceans cracked, its creatures cried out. The god's power was tearing it apart. Darkness, that was all Eli could see. No light, no sound, not even his heartbeat. It felt like being erased from existence. For a long time there was nothing but silence. Then, pain. A deep crushing pain that shot through his chest. He gasped as he fell to his knees on a cold surface that wasn't there a moment ago. He looked around. The void had changed again. It wasn't endless white anymore. It was filled with broken fragments of light floating in the air, like shattered glass suspended in time. A faint whisper echoed from above. Do you understand now, human? Eli knew that voice. It was Erythion, but it sounded weaker now, distant, almost trembling. Eli stood slowly, his breath heavy. What have you done? The god's voice grew sharper. You changed the game. You dared to touch the order of creation. Now all creation trembles. Eli looked around and saw it. The little world he had made shattered. Its pieces drifted through the void like dying embers. Tiny lights like souls faded one by one. He felt his throat tighten. You killed them. Erythion's form appeared, huge, made of light and shadow, eyes burning like collapsing suns. They were your creation. You brought imperfection into eternity. You made me remember weakness. Now I erase it. Eli's voice shook. You think destruction fixes pain? You think ending everything will make you whole again? The god moved closer. His voice thundered through the broken void. Silence. You speak of pain as if it is noble. You speak of care as if it is strength. But I have watched billions of your kind die. Empires fall. Civilizations burn. You love, then destroy. You build, then break. That is your truth. Eli clenched his fists. Yes, that's what makes us alive. We fail, we fall, but we stand up again. That's what you can't understand. The light around them pulsed violently. The shards of broken worlds began to tremble. Erythion's eyes glowed brighter. Then show me, human. Show me how you stand against a god. Suddenly everything shifted again. The fragments of light twisted into a massive storm of energy. Worlds appeared and vanished in seconds. Planets were born, then crushed. Time itself bent. And in the middle of it all stood Eli, tiny, fragile, human. The voice roared, Fight if you dare. Eli fell to his knees, the storm tearing at his body. He wasn't meant to survive this. He was just a scientist, a thinker, not a warrior. But somewhere deep inside, a spark of something ancient ignited. Human will. He forced himself to his feet. The storm howled, tearing pieces of him away. But he kept moving forward, step by step, toward the burning figure of Erythion. The god's form towered over him, but Eli didn't stop. You said this is a test, he shouted. Then here's my answer. He raised his hand and light burst from his palm. Not the god's kind of light. Cold and perfect, but human light. Warm, uneven, full of life. The light reached the broken fragments around him, and suddenly, they began to move. The shattered pieces of the small world started to pull together again. The creatures that had vanished reappeared as faint echoes, their songs filling the air once more. Erythion's voice cracked with disbelief. Impossible. Eli's voice was hoarse but steady. It's not impossible, it's us. Every time we're broken, we rebuild. You can't erase that. The god's form trembled. The storm slowed. For the first time, Erythion looked uncertain. You're just one man, the god whispered. Eli nodded. Maybe, but one man can remind a god what it means to live. The storm stilled completely. The broken worlds hovered in silence. Erythion lowered his gaze, his burning eyes dimming slightly. You make me feel what I should not. Doubt, fear, regret. Why do you do this? Eli took a step closer. Because that's what humanity does. We make others feel. You called it weakness. I call it the one thing that makes us stronger than you. For a long moment, the god said nothing. The silence between them was heavy, filled with something neither could name. Then the light around Erythion began to crack again, this time deeper, wider. From the fractures came not anger, but sorrow. I was once like you, the god said softly. Long before time began, I cared. I loved what I created, but when my creations turned on each other, I ended it all. I thought if I removed emotion, I would remove pain. I was wrong. Eli stared at him. That's why you started this test. Not to destroy humanity, but to understand it. Erythion's voice broke. To remember what it felt like. The void grew dimmer. The stars flickered. The god's power seemed to fade. Eli stepped forward. Then let me help you remember. Don't erase us. Learn from us. For a brief second, it looked as if Erythion would accept. His form softened. The storm faded completely and light gently wrapped around them both. But then something shifted. Deep cracks tore across the god's body. His voice became panicked, almost human. No, something's wrong. I cannot contain it. Your emotions, they are spreading. The stars began to shatter again. The light around them flared uncontrollably. Erythion, Eli shouted. Stop fighting it. Let it be part of you. But the god was no longer listening. His light turned violent. I remember too much. The loss, the screams. The fire, I cannot bear it again. The ground beneath Eli vanished. The void twisted and he was thrown backward into the dark. As he fell, he reached out one last time. You don't have to bear it alone. But his voice was lost in the chaos. The storm consumed everything, the god, the stars, even the small world Eli had rebuilt. And then, silence again. When the light returned, Eli was lying on the floor of the testing chamber. The machines were silent. The dome was cracked. The others, his team, his world, were gone. Only one thing remained. A single glowing symbol on the ground, pulsing faintly. It was Erythion's mark, but it had changed. Now it glowed with a soft golden warmth. Eli touched it, and a voice, quiet, almost human, whispered in his mind. Perhaps you were right, human. Perhaps the game was never about winning. Eli looked up at the empty dome. Then what was it about? Remembering. The voice faded. The mark dimmed, and Eli understood. The god was gone, but something of him remained. A spark, a memory, a lesson. As Eli stood in the ruins of the test chamber, he realized the truth. Humanity hadn't lost. They had changed a god. But somewhere beyond the stars, in the dark where light could not reach, something was stirring again. And Eli knew. The game wasn't over. Not yet. The world was silent. After the storm of light, after the god's last whisper, everything seemed still. Too still. Eli Voss stood in the center of the broken testing chamber. Cracks split the walls like frozen lightning. The air was thick with dust and silence. Machines, once glowing with cosmic energy, now lay dark and lifeless. For a long moment, Eli didn't move. His heart beat softly, the only sound left. He had survived. Somehow he was alive, but as he looked around, he realized the truth. He was alone. Everyone else was gone. Scientists, soldiers, the observers all vanished as if they never existed. He whispered, Erythion. No answer. Only silence. He placed his hand on the floor where the golden mark still pulsed faintly. It was warm, soft, alive. He could still feel the presence of the god, but weaker now, like an echo fading across time. You're still here, aren't you? He said quietly. The mark flickered. A faint voice echoed in his mind, fragile and tired. Yes, human. But not as I was. The test is unfinished, Eli frowned. Unfinished? You said the game was about remembering. It was, and yet memory alone cannot save creation. You gave me your truth, but now you must face mine. Before Eli could speak, the light on the ground expanded suddenly, wrapping around him. The chamber vanished. He felt weightless again, pulled through layers of reality. When his vision cleared, he stood once more in the void. But it was different this time. The darkness wasn't empty. It was filled with echoes, ghostly shapes of people, cities, and worlds. Fragments of what once was. A cold wind whispered through them like sorrow. At the center of it all stood Erythion, but he was no longer made of perfect light. His body flickered between radiance and shadow, unstable, broken. Eli Voss, the god, said softly, "You made me remember compassion, but with it came something I had long buried, grief. I remember every world I destroyed, every life I ended. Can you understand what that means?" Eli stepped closer. "It means you're finally alive." Erythion's eyes dimmed. "No, it means I am dying. The power that once held creation together is fading. My emotions, your emotions, tear me apart." Eli's voice was calm. "Then let it. Maybe something new will grow from it." The god tilted his head. "You think destruction leads to rebirth?" Eli smiled faintly. "Always has. Look at Earth. We fall, we bleed, but we rise again. Maybe the universe needs that too." For a moment, the god was silent. Then he said, "If I let go, all I have created will fall into chaos. Time, light, stars, all will vanish. Even you." Eli looked up, fearless. "Then I'll face that too." The god's form trembled. "You would die for this?" Eli took a breath. "Not die, choose. That's something gods never learned. We live with choice. That's what makes us human." Erythion stared at him, his light flickering wildly. The storm around them began again, slowly, painfully. The void shuddered, reality bending like glass under pressure. "Then let us play one last game," the god said. "No questions. No illusions. Only truth." The stars returned, forming a circle around them. The floor beneath Eli's feet became a mirror reflecting both man and God. "Tell me," Erythion said, "if humans are so strong, why do they always forget what they learn? Why do you keep repeating your mistakes?" Eli looked at his reflection and whispered, "Because memory without pain is useless. We forget, so we can feel a